Hello and welcome to the AdTech Heroes podcast. Today's episode is a special one, and we are live from Cannes, where we have four amazing guests today. Alex Monteiro, Worldwide Business Director at mSix&Partners, Danielle, Darko, Global Programmatic Director, Mediacom, Andrés, Ordóñez, Chief Creative Officer at FCB, Michelle Sarpong, Head of Digital and Audio Activation, the 7 Stars, and I'm your host, Darko, VP Global Partnerships at Seedtag. Today's topic is driving interest and engagement in the attention economy. So I think a great place to start today, guys, is asking you what has grabbed your attention in Cannes over the last few days. So we'll kickstart with you, Danielle.
Awesome. I would say this is my first Cannes experience, so I am a Cannes newbie. And I would say what has grabbed my attention is, let's not forget, we just went through a pandemic. So it's literally being stuck at home, working from home, etc. Coming to Cannes for the first time, and for a lot of people it's returning to Cannes. It's just moving away from your little bubble that you know, and basically meeting people from all backgrounds, all invested in digital, all about trying to do better for their advertisers or the company that they work for. And for me, it's just amazing and overwhelming to see so much talent. And most importantly, it also gives you a little bit of pride knowing that you're part of that, you know, and we keep evolving. So for me, that's what captivated me.
Andrés?
First, it's after the 2 years of pandemic, I realized how tall or how short everyone is because of Zoom. You know, like so many meetings, and now I'm meeting them. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so tall, and like, or I'm so too short. I don't know, but maybe both. But that's the first thing. But I think also the adrenaline of Cannes. You know, like every morning waking up, getting to see the shortlist, getting to go to the Palais, looking at the work, setting the bar for next year, being with your friends, your colleagues, and everyone. It's just there is an energy that being remote, it was lost. And now being back and getting to see that, it's just like we're back, we're ready, and well, now we're back to zero on Saturday to get back next year. So it's amazing.
I mean, I'm going to say this villa that we're all sitting in is amazing. I mean, that grabbed my attention when I walked in. But I think what the guys have said is actually right in terms of like it's been a melting pot of like all creatives coming together, which I think like we've obviously missed that point from having the pandemic and like having restricted, you know, like interactions with everyone. So I think being around like other creatives and just bouncing off ideas, I think that's something that's been lost during that pandemic period. Like when you have an idea, you're not going to like phone someone or email someone. Like in a room, you can just kind of just bounce ideas off each other and actually just go home and actually then try and implement it. So I think that's what's kind of grabbed my attention during my time at Cannes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm also a newbie in Cannes, and I think what grabbed my attention for sure, well, this amazing weather that we've been having every day, but I feel like people came this year after 2 years break with even more creative, even thinking much more. The world completely changed, and we were able to adapt to the world, being us ourselves adapting to the world, but actually the brands adapting to the world, and you can see actually the creative talking about that. And very important for me, also the diversity that we're seeing even more across every brand. Everything that we're seeing, everything that changed, it actually changed the world. So very interesting.
I think, totally agree with all those points. I think it's celebrating all of our industries, and we're all working together and we're all collaborating. And who knows, right? A conversation that you might have had in the last few days, you know, over a drink or over a coffee, it could open up so many opportunities, not only for the companies that we work for, but our own careers, right, and our future. So I think it's super important to collaborate and work together, educate ourselves, educate each other. I think we've had an amazing few days, and I'm looking forward to many more in-person events moving forward as well.
Exactly.
So I think, you know, 2022, we've got half the year to go. Let's keep doing these events, keep doing these podcasts, and keep working together. I think it's so important.
I also think, just to add, it's so nice to, instead of saying your camera isn't working, you're frozen, oop, I've lost signal, it's so much better just to say lovely to meet you in person, finally.
Danielle, you're on mute.
Am I?
No.
I literally tried.
That would have been brilliant if she was.
Funny.
So today's topic is all about attention, right? So I think let's start off with the topic of attention. And again, I'm looking straight at you, Danielle. So I'll ask you the question first. Why should attention be important to brands? So the brands that you're working with on a day-to-day basis, and just generally, as a consumer online. Or offline, why do you think attention is important to brands or should be important to brands?
I think I'm going to take a step back and first let's just understand what is attention. It's a fancy new word, some may say, but it's been around for a while. For me, it's the distinction from being seen to being noticed. So it's a step up from your viewability. Let's move away from 10 years of staring at viewability saying, hey, was it seen? Was it seen for 2 seconds? It's all about, was it noticed to generate an action that is beneficial for my brand? That is why attention to me is important. You will be surprised. Studies have shown with a little bit of focus on why attention is important, you will see an uplift. Be as it may, brand recall, be as it may, just awareness for your client, for your brand. It's just, that's why I think it's important. Being noticed.
Yeah, and I think actually with attention, like we all know, like everyone's trying to grab our attention in all different platforms, right? We've got social media, we've got like TV, we've got connected TV. So I think actually attention is even more important because actually it's quite fabricated at the moment. So I think with us and brands and agencies as well, trying to push for actually what is actually put the consumer at the heart and actually what will grab your attention, like what would actually interest that consumer to actually then make that action point, make that purchase. I think that's what we need to do to try and actually make sure that we're doing right by our clients and right by the brands as well.
I feel like attention is basically the real meaning of impact. We always talk about impact, but usually, especially in media, impact for us was almost the bigger the better, which doesn't mean attention. And I feel like attention now is actually driving that impact. That is not only about the size. The size not always matter, sometimes, but not always. But it's more about all the variables that attention contain together, and that will drive that impact, that will drive that noticeability.
Yeah, I think from a creative standpoint, I believe attention is beautiful. It is why we love what we do. It's the reason why creativity is so important for every brand, because anything else, it could be a formula and just go after it. But when I feel that we're back into the roots of creativity versus now we have to go through attention. I think that we have to start from an attention standpoint every time we do work. So then we go and we become, how are we going to become that magnet? And I think that's one of the beauties.
I love that word, magnet.
And then I suppose as marketers and we have to report back on this attention, right? So how are we doing this? Are we going and speak to every single person that's seen an ad? Of course not, right? We can't do that. It's not scalable. It's not going to work. So how have you seen the measurement within the attention space, and how have you seen that kind of flesh out in the last year or so? So Michelle, I'll go for you this time.
Yeah, so I think what we're trying to see is like we're challenging publishers actually to come out with look at your platforms and actually what are you doing around attention space. I think as an agency especially, we were kind of actively a period of time just speaking to all the publishers and going, actually, what research are you doing around attention? Also looking at our metrics as well, say actually what is like the CTR rates. I know we obviously were focusing on that for a long time, but actually what measurements should we be looking at in terms of the engagement metrics and trying to work together in that. Also trying to challenge industry performances like IAB, actually what are you doing to bring everyone together actually so we can have that one unity metric that we can actually all go out to the market with and actually then talk to our clients about. So I think leading that conversation with our clients as well is something that we've been actively trying to do, but trying to push our publishers to help them come along with that journey with us. So I think the creative guys have always been on that journey in terms of they're all about the storytelling and they've always been about the brand engagement from day one. So actually it's like us agencies, clients coming on that journey along with the publishers to try and move that forward as well. And
do you think we've found this standardized approach of measurement within attention? Probably not.
No,
right?
We haven't. But I think the likes of Playground XYZ, Lumen are obviously pushing that agenda and actually working with a lot of the publishers to try and get there. So I think we're not there yet. I think obviously it's still a very new conversation, but I think we're getting there.
And Danielle, what have you seen over at your side?
Similar to what Michelle was just saying, it's having those conversations with those partners that have been doing that research, so they have a little bit more understanding and data to back it. So for instance, Lumen, they've been doing it for years, where they look at eye tracking on desktop, and then on mobile they have a little device where they are able to track how those users are, and they've come up with a formula on how to measure attention, and they've made it very simple, dwell time times 1,000, blah, 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 blah. And they're sharing that with people because they want us to basically adopt. So they're taking the leap. And then, of course, Playground XYZ, they're doing a similar approach. There are other partners out there, Adelaide, etc. So it's all about speaking to these partners, check in, do a thorough RFI, see what aligns with your client's objectives, etc., and take that forward. You have to test so that you can literally establish a good case study of what has worked and what hasn't for you to move forward. So similar to what you just said, Michelle.
Would you say it's all about challenging each other, whether it's the creative agency challenging the media agency versus the brand versus the media owner? Would you say it's
challenging? 100%. We owe it to our brands that are trusting us as their specialists, their consultants, to basically challenge it. If we're not doing that, if we're not challenging it, are we doing our jobs on behalf of our advertisers?
I feel like measurement needs to start not when we run the media. We need to look at measurement before, when the creative starts to be built.
I love that.
When we start going to ideas, to insights, to creative insights, etc. From the example that I have at mSix&Partners and the End Partnership, because we are a full service agency as well. We try to get, for us it's harder, it's easier because we already work together, we already are one company, so we can work maybe a little bit more agile and nimble to drive this insights and quick measurement and drive that conversation immediately before we start actually running. So we're pushing for the attention way before the audience is actually seeing it. So I feel like that measurement, because the measurement post viewing is a little bit harder, so it's going to be flawed because we can't put measurement in everyone that sees that you're at in the mobile privacy and all of that, right? But if we guarantee that the job that the creative team does is actually the right one to capture the attention of your target audience, will actually drive that conversation a little bit further and actually help you being much more efficient with your media as well.
And then I suppose from a creative agency side of things and the creative, are you always challenged on measurement, or is that less of a conversation? You're doing all the nice executions and storytelling and no one really cares if that backs towards a KPI?
I think I like to break the rules of measurement and all that, because I believe that if we take every word for every word or every research out in the world for it's like, oh, this is how it's going to work, I think we end up with average work. We end up all doing the same, and I think that's when we lose our people, when we lose our target, because we tend to use that as the sacred thing to do, versus here's the world you have to play with. How are you gonna break it and create a little bit of something like that? So like a couple of years ago, we did this film that it was a 2-minute film, and we were gonna put it out into the world, and it was like no one's gonna engage. And actually, it was like one of the most views ads of that year, and it was like so. I think we have to learn how to. I think that we have a beautiful opportunity from an agency and everyone to. How do we read the information versus dictate what creativity should be? Because then creativity dies.
Yeah, I think we're so bogged down into the results and the measurement and the numbers that we then lack that creativity, right? And the execution of the creative is done, earlier in the chain, and by the time it comes to the media owner side, we can't be creative in our way, and the agency probably can't. The media agency can't be creative in their way. So I think it's super important for us all to collaborate. Have you guys seen that from the creative side? Are you guys working more so with the media agencies, brainstorming, figuring out how to tie up creative with the execution and the strategy?
Yes, I think we should. I always believe that the more of us we're sitting at the front of the briefing, the stronger the outcome is going to be. The later that it comes, it will always be so hard, because sometimes if you start creativity from your own side with the client, and then you get to the media side, they're like, well, we don't even have those channels. So it's like, we need to start sooner. I also believe that media, what it gives us, and strategy, what it gave us, is that it makes the work bulletproof when it goes to our clients. And sometimes we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. So it's more about how it backs up the creativity or the work before it goes out into the market.
And Michelle, have you seen that collaboration happen more so now?
Yeah, I was going to say actually, like, I know we talked about the pandemic earlier and how like great it is to be out, but I think there was some positives to take from the pandemic as well. I think naturally, I think we all started to work close together with like creative clients, because everyone's like, we paused and we were like, what do we do now actually? And actually there was a lot of challenges in terms of like adapting the creative, in terms of making sure it was like, you know, sensitive and COVID friendly, etc. And actually people had more time to engage and stuff, right? Actually people realised that actually, you know, there's, you know, some brands that actually took like the humorous route down their creative, and actually they saw massive engagement as well. So I think naturally you're starting to see us working closer and closer together, because as we touched on the point before, like that creative is not separate, that we should be involved further up the funnel just to kind of have that conversation and being like, oh actually you've got this creative idea, we're like, oh, actually that might work better for video, it might work better for radio, like having that conversation earlier, and I think actually then will drive the best results naturally.
Yeah, I think something that, because of so much data that we used to have in our hands, we forget about looking at our own category by brand. And I think going back to just being pure communication people, look at your completely category and understand this, if it's a sea of sameness, because if you keep on playing on that world, it's not going to happen. Attention is not going to happen. So we need to understand what is happening and how can I just do something different. What is that thing that's going to disrupt to bring me that engagement back?
I think that's the key word, disrupt, isn't it? It's to do something different, out of the box and cut through and then engage with the consumer, right? So
yeah, because it's always easy to do more of the same. And what everyone is doing is like, oh look, everyone loves doing this. It's like, yeah, but if I switch logos, is it yours? Yeah. But then you can just always switch that logo, and that's dangerous.
I feel like disruption was a little bit the buzzword 4 years ago. Yeah. It still stands, but it was a little bit the buzzword 4 years ago. I feel like this, and I completely agree with what you were saying, and specifically, and stepping back a little bit on the measurement point, we cannot be computers. We cannot only look into computers, and there are several examples that data needs to be evaluated by humans. So the human part will always have to be involved. But when you were talking about that disruption, I think that disruption still needs to come with. Everything needs to start, of course, with an insight, right? And the insight from your audience and the insight from the world that we live in and everything. When you get to that insight, the disruption sometimes can be just presenting the same. You can maintain yourself in the same level, but you're just presenting yourself in a different way. That's how you show this. You do, most of the times, you don't need to reinvent the wheel for the brand. The most successful brands are the most simple brands that exist, and I think sometimes we just try to go a little bit too further, and most of the times people just want something simple, and that's what's going to stay in their head.
Yeah. But would you say it's scalable to grab attention? Would you say, you know, there are so many ways of grabbing the attention of the consumer? Are there specific ways you guys think that are the most scalable? Because ultimately it's a numbers game, right? That's why social's done so well over the years, because it's all about the numbers, it's all about the eyeballs, and its scale, right? So if you have a certain channel to go through, and you could have the best results in the world, but you can only deliver, you know, 1 million impressions, it's no good to the brand, right? So yeah, I suppose my question is, how can you scale out your strategies when it comes to capturing that attention? And I'm looking at you, Michelle, so I'll ask you first.
Because actually it's interesting about scale, because I think actually we're starting to move away. I think that was the conversation, like always with the digital platforms, right? But I think now we're looking at more context, right? So we're actually looking at like, actually it's not actually always about the scale, it's about actually the environments that all of the creative and your ads are actually running in, because actually that naturally drives better engagement, and people are actually probably going to pay more attention for stuff that is actually relevant for them. So I think scale was a conversation that we had with clients, and that's all they cared about, the end number. But actually I think slowly that conversation is changing to context, and I think clients are actually becoming more open to it. I think it's across all channels as well. I think, like, you know, let's talk about back days of the print publishers, they will talk about context for a long time, and I think actually everyone's slowly starting to come on that journey, and I think it's come full circle. Hence why we're talking about attention now, right? Because, you know, at first the story of digital was like, we can reach millions of people, and that's all everyone cared about. And actually when you're briefing to clients, they're like, but how many people does it reach? But now obviously the conversation's changed, but it's all to do with the context.
Danielle, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I completely agree with that. It is to do with the context, and there are many ways to do that. Also, is understanding. So that when we look back at what are the kinds of domains that are out there, you can say there are three variations. There's your task domain. So, for instance, how do I spell this thing? And then you go on dictionary and check it out. And yes, you might see an ad there, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to engage with that ad. You're just going to see it. And then you have your context. Then you also have your premium sites. They're seeing more positive uplift on the content as well as your premium in terms of the engagement with those ads, simply because of how they have targeted those desired audiences in an environment that they're already engaged and quite willing to be in. So with things like that, you can then you can also look at the where you want to put the ad. You don't have to worry about that. Some people are still of the old school mentality of only on top of the fold. With context as well as premium sites, it's okay to be at the bottom because that person's engaged in reading that article. They will happily engage with you at the bottom of the fold. So you can still get scale by you doing it smart. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's been important over the last few years, or 10 years even, has been that scale, and the best way of reaching that scale is having this one-size-fits-all approach, right? So, we've seen tons of just standard banners out there, and Andrés probably hates these standard banners that are following him around the web. So, I suppose my question is then, are we now going back to the creative and asking those questions? We don't want scale. We don't want to serve the same leaderboard ad across 50 different sites saying the same message. Like, are we adapting that creative and being a lot more creative? Are you seeing that on the agency side, Michelle?
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, going back to the pandemic, seem a bit obsessed with it, but I think naturally with, there's a lot of talk about D&I actually, so that's been a conversation that actually a lot of clients, agencies, and actually creative agencies are probably finding that actually that was a forefront of the conversation. So actually creative has been, it's such an important part, and actually clients now are actually okay, fine, it's more having that as a forefront in terms of we've got this creative, how can we adapt our media plan to actually fit that. And actually we talked about it before in terms of creative testing, that's becoming more of a prominent thing, and actually we're finding more publishers as well bringing that as a part of their package in terms of actually before you got run on our platforms, let's test a few of your creatives and see which one actually engage with our audience, and actually taking ownership of that conversation as well. So I think creative has actually become more important than ever now actually, because I think everyone is leaning into that conversation. I think even us as 7 Stars, we've got a creative arm now internally as well, because I think actually we know that it's not a completely separate device, it's literally all part of the same conversation.
I think that's an important topic, diversity and inclusion, right? And that starts at the creative. On the creative agency side, have you seen a change over the years, and with being more inclusive, your industry is being more inclusive, or do we still have a way to go?
We will never finish when it comes to that. I think we got to keep evolving as an industry. I think I always try to say that the more diverse that we are, the stronger the creativity it comes out, because look at us, we're sitting here, we all have different lenses on this topic, and the outcome will be great. So I think that we have to be diverse on everything that we do. I think that the outcome will always be a lot stronger.
Well, I'm a little bit too passionate about diversity and inclusion, but I think it's not only about being diverse in the work that you present, is actually being diverse in the teams that you have, and that's when you are yourself, you're gonna. If you don't have to work on hiding something or afraid of something, you can actually deliver the 100% to your job. So I feel I'm seeing that difference in media. I'm seeing in creative and PR, etc. I'm actually part of the LGBT network for WPP Unite. We launched last year, and this is something that we've been seeing changing, and we've been pushing for policies and been pushing for actually conversation to be had, and getting together with all the pillars and intersectioning. Is intersectioning a word?
Yeah, the intersectioning. Yeah.
Intersectioning all the conversations that we need to have to drive this, and we just delivered a big campaign for London Pride that was exclusively made by queer people, for queer people, for the City of London, and this was actually very, very, very interesting to see how everyone worked together. Everyone, and it was actually WPP, as you guys know, is
it's a massive company, and it was creative people from different agencies, media people from different agencies, PR, everything like that, design, and it was good to see that even though everyone was from different agencies, everyone was there with a purpose, and when you give someone a purpose, they will deliver a better job. And it's the same for brands. When brands have a purpose and when brands have something to say more than I do this or I'm pretty, people will resonate much more with it.
And do you think that starts with your hiring? So with the people that you have in your team, would you say
Completely. At TNP, at the End Partnership, and at mSix&Partners, we actually have a culture fit interview. So everyone that goes for interviews, there's one interview. If you pass the second interview, for example, we actually have a third interview that was going to be 15 to 20 minutes. We ask a couple of questions about their position, about diversity. You don't need to be from a diverse background to believe in diversity, to believe in inclusion, to believe in belonging. We want everyone to belong to our agency, so we make sure that everyone that we interview is actually being the right person to join us. And I can tell you that I've interviewed several people, and I told these people are not fit for the culture that I want in my agency, and they didn't get hired. So I'm actually seeing this being put in place, so it's very interesting.
And I think it ladders up, doesn't it? Like when you've got a diverse workforce, that's where creativity comes from, right? And actually, and I think what's one thing that's been really key in terms of how the industry is kind of changing is that people really look at authenticity, don't they? And actually that comes from the creative, that comes from your workforce, and I think that then ladders back up to this is how people then will engage with your ads, and this is where attention comes from. I think naturally, the past couple of years, I think brands have been really looking at themselves and actually going, what do we want to align with? And then that's where the conversation comes with, what can we do in the creative? Where can we place our ads to make sure that actually the context, the authenticity is right, and actually then you drive engagement and attention. So I think it all works together to create a better workforce and a better campaign that we do for our clients as well.
I think the word there is authentic, as well as what Alex mentioned was purpose. And Andrés, I know you have talked even on our podcast a few months back about purpose. Do you see that is what separates brands from other brands? Is literally purpose?
Well, I think consumers are looking at brands very, very different. The right way, actually, and I believe that anything in the world is you need to start with they know what's your role in people's life more than anything. Attention comes to what's the role of you in my life. It's not that they love or not love the brand, but if you don't see me, you don't get me, we can't have a relation. And I think purpose, that's why it's gotten so strong. And at least in our agency, I think it starts with when a brief comes out, who are the right people to put around that brief? Who are the right lenses to be looking at this and pushing the work? Because we know that, to your point, if you have a passion point already onto that brief, it will connect. It will connect, and I think that's what it is. And I think that attention, that's where it's going to get huge, because that is the game. It's a little bit of a emotional connection. That it goes back to the power of creativity, of connecting back into the heart of the people, and not just thinking of them as just robots or cold people or all made equal, which we don't like that.
Exactly.
Finally. And the other thing is lead by example. I say in our agency, the management, you look at us and we all come from different backgrounds, and I think that is the company we want to work for. The same should be on the brand side when we look at our clients, making sure that they do art as diverse as the work they want to put out into the world, because if you don't have that lens into the work, you actually might come on a really, really wrong way into the world, because you just don't know. And people need to understand there is so many things that we just don't know until we're all sitting at the table.
And it's okay not knowing sometimes. It's all about figuring it out together, right?
It is the beauty.
Exactly. And the beauty is we're all working in companies, like you've just mentioned, very diverse. I mean, it's even on our signature, people first, better results over at Mediacom. And it's absolutely right. If you don't know that answer, reach into your network and basically find out someone who does and sees what they have done to basically get that. And just to your point about emotions, I mean, studies have shown, I remember there was over in my department, we had a little team Christmas special meeting where we basically chose the best ads, TV ads we've ever seen, and we basically did some research, and it was all linked to emotions. Of course, the John Lewis Christmas ads were in there, but yes, that's literally something that captured us and drove our attention, and it stayed with us, didn't it? It impacts you and how you see that brand, and that's the connection we want with all of the brands that we work on behalf of. And yeah, diversity and definitely the right people help drive that.
Yeah, we were now that you mentioned that, we were on a pitch and we had this client visiting the agency, and we played one of our case studies, and she started crying. And we're in a pitch and like, we made the client cry. Is that good or is it bad? But it actually, we won, and exactly we what are the right triggers? And I think that is like, look for the right trigger to be that magnet to bring people in, and I think that's where we're gonna win.
Yeah, absolutely, and be proud of it. You know, we worked on this massive campaign on behalf of our client, and we were thinking outside the box with this one, you know, working at the very beginning with the creative agency, understanding what the creative agency wanted to do, and then supporting that with, okay, these are the audiences we think is best for this, and this is the environment we want. And we actually did a screening for it, you know, after we launched with pizza, you know, about 20 of us or something, just sitting there in the office before COVID and literally just watched it. And it wasn't a 10-second video, it wasn't a 20-second, it wasn't a 30, it was quite lengthy, you know, and we were engaged, you know, and we put in the right environment on behalf of that client. And that's something we still talk about today, because it was one of our best collaborations with all of the right arms, the creative arm, working with the client, having catch-ups and literally then feeding it down to the right publishers to really push that story to the user, and then the results, fantastic.
I always go back to human behaviors, just basic human behaviors, and I tell the clients sometimes, you wake up in the morning, you open your feed, let's call it Instagram right now, and are you gonna stop, are you gonna give them a heart, or are you gonna share it? That is which type of work you want us to do, and I think we're looking for that share.
Yeah, that shareability.
So and that share happens when it connects with you at a very different point than the rest of the 100 things that you just saw. So I think that's where the beauty happens. That's where creativity happens.
Yeah, and I think a key takeaway from just this conversation is being purpose drives attention.
Yeah.
And without the purpose, you can't get the attention right. So I think they literally come hand in hand. Have you guys seen any brands or specific verticals that have done that well, that have driven that purpose, which has ultimately led to attention?
Why are you looking at me?
You guys have the numbers.
I know, literally, I'm just trying to think which ones.
It could be a vertical if you can't name any names.
There was a sports brand that basically linked it down to making some change in the environment, and that resonated with me. It was a brand I didn't even work on, but I remember from understanding the creative message and the story and where they wanted to place and the impact they wanted, how the product was being made, that blew my mind. And it wasn't too long ago that they did that, and that is something that stays with me.
Yeah, no, I'll jump in here, because from a Seedtag perspective, we work with brands all across the world, agencies all across the world, and again, going back to the topic of the pandemic, the start of COVID, you know, there were different strategies that brands had, right? Some of them just totally stopped all their activity, didn't run any campaigns. Some of them were business as usual, which probably wasn't the best way. And then you had some brands that would come to us and say, look, we want to show that we're there for our clients, our customer base, our existing customers. What should we do? And on the Seedtag side, because everything that we do is contextual based, it's cookieless, it looks at semantics and sentiment within an article, we can see if an article is positive around the pandemic or negative around the pandemic. And of course, it gave a massive opportunity for brands to engage with users in a mindset that was positive and uplifting.
Yeah.
And that's where brands want to be in and around, right? So to be remembered when they are consuming, where the users are consuming positive content. So we've done a ton of work, whether it's with telcos brands saying, you know, we're here, we've given you free service. If you want to call your family abroad, we're doing that. We're giving you unlimited data. And I think those campaigns worked really well, where it wasn't so much pushing a product, it was just letting their customers know that we're still here for you.
Yeah. I definitely think in the pandemic there was loads of brands that won and a lot of them that lost actually, and I think even myself, like some brands I probably will never engage with again after seeing how they interacted. But I think for one of our clients, Iceland, obviously the supermarket, we obviously knew how mental. Remember queuing up for a supermarket? Who thought we'd see those days? But they obviously then were one, if not the first supermarket that actually opened up early for elderly people to go in. And actually that was quite a nice. It was a simple thing to do, but a brilliant thing because actually then it's just like we're just giving back. Actually, we're actually thinking about we know everyone's buying four packs of toilet roll, but actually like if we open up earlier, we then look after our elderly actually. So I think Iceland was probably a brand that actually really lent into that space actually. And obviously years before they'd done stuff, obviously they've been quite big on sustainability, etc. So I think that naturally fitted with the brand when actually we're in a pandemic, what can we do to help? And actually just a simple thing of giving that spare hour, a couple of hours for the elderly to actually go and do shopping. I think they naturally won from that actually. And actually, to be fair, they didn't really advertise it as much. Like they didn't utilize it as look at us, we're doing this good thing. It was kind of like a subtle thing that was just out on a few social posts, and it kind of just got viral and it spread. So, and actually from that, a lot of supermarkets started to do that. So I thought that was quite a tactical way because actually there was a fine line in the pandemic of not taking advantage of the situation that we were in, but also trying to help people. And I think there was a lot of categories retail really struggled with that. So you had one of our clients, H&M, did pretty good on e-commerce actually, but actually you didn't want to be we're doing quite well in the pandemic because we obviously knew that people were suffering and dying and stuff. So actually it was that fine line actually where we had to actually lean on the creative agency a lot to try and get that balance right in terms of actually not taking advantage of the situation but trying to be there for your consumer as well.
Yeah, I think last night we won the Grand Prix on creative effectiveness. Pretty much is the answer to this talk. And it goes back to for Michelob Ultra, an organic beer, big in America. And one of the basic things, it was all right, we talk the talk about organic, and everyone's talking organic, so we can be opportunistic and sell more beer. Or is there anything else? What are we really doing for the farms, for the land? And then the data showed us that only 2% of the land in the US was organic. So that will run out very quickly. So it was, how do we help the farmers transition to become organic? So we make sure that there's a better future, but not only for us as a brand, but also once we help them transform the land, how can they actually sell all this to other brands and things like that. And we started a program 2-3 years ago, and we're now helping farmers become organic, and it's a beautiful program. But it goes back to, what is my product all about? What is the thing that I should be paying more attention from a brand standpoint, and the outcome is consumers knowing that it's all connected.
Yeah, I think picking up on your point is exactly that, giving back to the communities. A couple of examples on sports brands. Nike and Adidas do this really, really well. I remember many years ago when I worked at Nike in Portugal, one of the things that we've created was the campaign was actually done with up and coming artists and from and this was 12 years ago. Anyway, the campaign was actually made with up and coming artists and people that would maybe probably become permanent in the community in Portugal, and that actually happened. And it was bringing them together with all the big sports and the big sports persons, people and the big artists, and bring them all together and actually use those people in Lisbon and in Porto, etc. Adidas did that very well recently as well. That you would see a local Brixton artist that had like a big out of home with this face, and so is just giving to the community that sense of belonging as well, bringing back to the belonging and to the inclusion. It's giving back to the community not only in helping the farmers, etc., but actually give them the community's visibility as well, because they're the ones that buy your product, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we saw a lot of empathy, didn't we, over the pandemic? Big brands supporting local communities, because we couldn't. Nothing was open, right? We couldn't travel. Everything was confined to our local communities, and if you didn't live in London, you were in a small town in the UK or a village or whatever it was. So I think you had to support those local communities, those local businesses, because they're ultimately the ones that got us out of the pandemic, right? So I think that the word empathy is super important there. I've got one final question for you guys. So slightly going different topic now, more about our industry. So, we've talked about quite a few different topics today, but what excites you guys most about the industry moving forward, whether it's 2022 and into 2023 and onwards? So Danielle, let's go with you first.
It's forever evolving. Today we're talking about attention. What are we going to be talking about in 5 years? We have the cookieless world coming up. What are people doing to prepare for that? There's a lot to do to prepare for that. So we're literally about to get very creative. We're moving away from the standard way of how we buy, standard way of how we plan, the standard way from how we measure. We're basically taking it a step up. And that's something that you should be really excited about. And the beauty I love about it is it's a blank canvas. We have ideas. We have roadmaps of how we're doing it. We're formulating case studies of how we do it. But literally, it's up to us to collaborate, with our clients as well, and literally paint what we think it should look like, and then take it from there. It's exciting.
I think not knowing is incredible. I think it's what pushes creativity to different levels. We were getting used to know too much, and I think not knowing is going to be beautiful. I always describe creativity is like a muscle, and if you don't work it because you're just like doing everything that you've been told, then it dies pretty much. But I think not knowing and that the uncertainty out into the world of what is going to happen next, which channel is going to come next, or how much do I really know or not, because it's beautiful. It is beautiful. I think the future is go back to the basics and push creativity as far as you can. So I think you're going to see an outcome in the next couple of years, maybe next Cannes, where you're going to start seeing how we're pushing limits much more than the last couple of years, having so much data in front of us.
Yeah, I think what's going to be exciting, similar to what Danielle said, is like the evolution of like media. I guess what's been exciting is like the digitization of everything. Like, it runs through every single channel, right? So actually in the next couple of years, are we going to be talking about channels? Are we going to be sitting here talking about digital? Or are we just talking about formats? And actually, if that's formats across every channel, actually, that I think I'm excited to see where that conversation goes, especially like now, video, we know that runs across, if not majority of the channels that we kind of work with. So what's that going to look like? Are planners going to be planning just video, display, or like, are they just going to be planning based on the formats, or are they going to be planning based on like channels? I think channel planning's coming to an end actually, and I think actually once we start planning on formats, that's where we then come closer again, working with creative teams as well, and actually become like, a melting pot of like, just ideas, and actually just moving the industry forward.
I feel like it's more about, as everyone is saying, there's the unknown and everything, but it's I think it's bringing it back to the roots of we are not chasing a number. We should not be chasing the scale, or we want a scale, but that scale can come from everywhere, and because everything is going to become measured as well, but with the digitalization of all channels, it's something that we can, when we plan a campaign from a media perspective, it's going to be something that if we want to follow an individual, even though we don't have access to their data, we can actually follow them in context, and bringing back the conversation to context again. Follow the context of their lives, and what do they need at that time of the day, and try to deliver the right message and the right product and the right brand for them. So yeah, I think that's the most exciting part.
I think that's something that will never change, right? Just like you just ended it there, delivering the right message with the right product to the right audience at the right time. That will never change. How we do it, though, is about to get fun.
Definitely.
So it's a lot of good things to look forward to, right? Amazing. So that's all we've got time for today in today's episode. Thanks, Alex, Danielle, Andrés, and Michelle for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Do I press a